guys, welcome back. So today we're going to be talking about some boring stuff like routing, wiring, and things like that. And then we're going to be looking at things like how we're going to control the different patterns on the belly lights, hooking up the soil sampler to the belly lights so they work in combination with each other. We're going to be doing the neon on the front of the robot. So just a bunch of different things trying to finish up the torso build portion right here. So let's jump into it. Guys, so we've got a couple things going on, just more cleanup work and everything and getting everything in final positions. But some of this is important. So when you're doing your build, you do have to keep in mind a couple things. So first of all, I was going to put the volume control right here with the little, series correct factory rotary knob that goes here. Problem is that the shaft for the little amplifier that has the volume on it is too short. Unfortunately, the fiberglass is thick, right? It's a good 1/4 inch, and it doesn't come out enough to put a nut on it for the screws and stuff like that. So I wasn't able to put it there. I'm gonna have to put something else here, but basically what I did is over here on top of the speaker, I put the little amp unit that has the adjustment for the volume, and this is right where one of the vents is. So I'll be able to get my hand in here and adjust the volume if I need to. Okay, if I want to turn up this is for the voice volume right here, up and down. The background sounds, the clicking and all that kind of stuff is here for the volume, and this is accessible for the rear vent, right? So those two are accessible from those side. So all I did is basically just, have it mounted right here, and then I hooked it all up. So we're good there. The other thing is what we did is I soldered a bunch of the trigger wires here onto the board. So these 4 trigger wires will trigger different light sequences on the belly lights, right? And I ran those, and I have them set to a couple different switches and stuff, which I'll show you in a second. And then we have our quick disconnects that are happening between the robot and the body. So right now I've got, this one's almost full, there's one left open here, and I've got like 2 pairs open on this yet. But yeah, and these will all be wrapped once we get them all finished, but that's kind of where we're going to. But the main thing I want to show you is inside the torso here now, we've got routing happening, right? So if you look here, you can see I've taken these little aluminum clamps, which are normally just pipe clamps, and I just epoxied them in there, and that's how I'm routing the wiring through to keep it neat. Because what you want to do is make sure there's nothing in the middle here when you're taking the torso on and off the center of the robot, because that stuff will all snag. So you got to keep it against the wall, which is what's happening here. So if you look, if I zoom in a little bit here, you can see over here I've got a couple of these clamps or pipe clamps, right, that I'm routing the wires through, right? And I haven't tied them down yet with wire ties. They're just running there right now. I've got the main power to the switch there. I've got a couple of little distribution blocks for 12-volt power, only because there's certain things inside the torso that just get straight 12-volt, and there's no reason running multiple wires out the top. So what I did is I ran just a pair to supply those 2 blocks, and then from there I can power anything that needs just plain 12 volts in the torso. So really all I have left now is the bunch of wires that go with the chest buttons. Everything else has kind of been routed at this point. You can also see over here I put a buck converter. So that is the little buck converter that's lowering the voltage to 3 volts for that little motor in the programming bay that's spinning the tape wheel. So, and I've got all that mounted and everything like that. And then I hooked up some all the wiring to the little switches that are in the programming bay. So let me show you, now that I have most of this all wired up, what it's going to do. First thing is we've got the power pack ready to go now. So when I put my power pack in the side here, if you can see, I'm just going to put it right there. I'm about to push it in, so when I push it in, you'll be able to see that the robot then comes alive, right? Okay. All right, so now the robot he's come alive, the sounds are on and everything like that. So what I've done here in the programming bay is I've got 3 switches in the programming bay, right? So if you notice the little tape reel is not moving right now. So I put that on the upper switch. So if I flip this up, you can see then the tape reel starts to move, right? And the speed that it moves at is based on that voltage I set on that, you know, buck converter. So if we go up here, you can see down there, it's basically showing me what my voltage is at right now. But you could change that, right, and adjust it and turn it up or down depending how fast you want the little wheel to spin. But super cool, right? Because it looks like it's actually doing something. So that works, but I'm able to turn on and off with this big switch right up here at the top. The other thing I did is, let me get this wire out of the way here, hold on. On the 2 switches here, these are basically changing the light pattern on the front here. So if you see, right now, the light pattern is just this normal random light pattern. On the right switch, if I flip it up, it's moving much faster, so it increases the speed basically of this light pattern, whatever it is. Turn it down, slower speed. On the left hand side, if I flip this one up, I get a different pattern. You see how I'm getting like basically 3 lights at a time zipping around in a pattern, and I can then flip the other one up on the right and make it even move faster. So I have a couple of different patterns and speeds that I can choose from depending on the position of those switches right here. So that's what I've done with that. Now the last thing I've done is I've got this wire right here, which is the soil sample trigger. And so what I've done here is I've taken it so that when I flip a switch right here, so I'm waiting for a rotary switch to come in, but that's where the knob's going to be. I'm just going to flick it, and when I flick it, it'll make contact here to trigger the soil sampler. But at the same time, what I did is I tied in one of those wires off the board to the ground, which will change the pattern on the belly lights. So it'll look like he's actually doing something and processing a soil sample. So let me put the camera on a tripod and hopefully you can see this. So the soil sampler is on the right there in the tread section, right? And you see the belly lights here. And I want you to pay attention to both sides simultaneously. So you'll see the soil sampler trigger, and then watch the belly lights when the soil sampler triggers. So you can see the soil sampler is doing its thing. Okay, and you see the belly lights are screaming around in a chase pattern. And then when it closes and it's finished its pattern, you notice how the belly lights go back to their normal pattern. So that's what I'm going to be doing right here with this little knob right here. So I'll just basically flick it till the soil sampler stops, and then flick it back, and then watch the process happen. And that'll be the trigger for the soil sampler. Now I could have just used one of the chest buttons and held it in right until the sampler runs and then let it go. That would have been an option too. So I think I'm going to use this switch though, because I need to put something here, and I'm not sure what else I would use it for at this point. Because I'm using the ones in the programming bay, so those are all set, but I still have one left over right here. I don't want to make it a dummy knob, right? I might as well use it for something, so that's why I'm thinking I'm just going to use this rotary switch I bought. It has a little longer shaft on it, so I can get a nut on it there, and then the series appropriate knob will be put on it, and then that's how I'll trigger the soil sampler. But you see how the lights change, and that's just because of that trigger wire. So the trigger wire in this particular case is the number 2 pin, which is this yellow, purple one, yellow and brown right here. And you can see it comes up over here. I've got it coming down right here, and it goes into the red side of the soil sampler wire that I'm triggering. That's going over to that switch. However, when I hooked it up originally, what happened is it worked fine, just like you saw, but the problem is then it kept triggering the soil sampler even though these two wires were apart, which it shouldn't, okay? Because all these wires do when you put them together is start the motor so it can get past a certain point at the soil sampler, and then another micro switch triggers that keeps it running at that point. And then when you let it go, it'll keep running because the other one took over. Once it goes back to its starting position, that micro switch opens and there's no more power, and as long as these aren't connected, it stops. And if you forgot that, that's in the other video I did on the soil sampler. But it kept going even though I had these apart. And the reason is because when I'm using this little wire to trigger that light sequence, it was backfeeding and grounding still, and then just triggering it again. So what I did is, if you can see it right here, it's very hard to see, but there's a tiny little diode right here. So I put a diode in here so that it can only flow in one direction, basically. So, and if you notice, the little stripe is on this side right here, okay? So the direction of flow is going towards the torso, basically. Okay, so when the system grounds, right, it'll be able to, this is feeding out to that. It'll see a ground, and then boom, it will trigger its light sequence, right? But when the soil sampler finishes its sequence and this no longer has a ground that's tied into this red wire, then it'll stop and it can't backfeed to then trigger the soil sampler again. So you're going to need, if you do it this way, right, you're going to need a diode. Because even if I was using, because this is basically just a momentary button, I was just touching them for 2 seconds and then letting them go, but it kept triggering over and over and over again. And so you gotta put a diode in here to control the flow so it only goes one direction. That solves it. These are the same diodes I used for the belly lights, right? So exact same diode, and you'll use that. And then I'm gonna mark this here. Once I tape this all up, right, I'm gonna mark where this diode is. I have another one also that I marked here. So there's gonna be couple places where diodes are located, but I won't remember where I put them or where they are. So always mark everything with these tags. Then you'll be set if in the future you ever have to do any maintenance or something happens and you have to replace a diode or something like that. So one about the things about the vents, I have them in the body, but they have this very specific screening behind it. So this is to just obscure, some of the mechanics and wiring on the inside. And basically the way it works is, let me show you a piece here I sort of had from before, but they'll be curved like this, and really what's happening is they're just going to fit inside here, so you kind of get this look on the outside here. Okay, so what you're going to want to do is, really take your flat piece of screening. So, and then you're going to take one of and you want to do this before you mount your vents into the robot, right? Because you want to do it after. So I have an extra set here, so I'm just using that. But basically all I'm doing is putting it right here, and I'm just sort of bending it in, because it is, fairly soft metal, and I'm just sort of bending it down. And what I'm going to do is get it all shaped, right? So that it fits inside this mount here, right here. So, and then you just, once you get that shape, you sort of you can manually bend it just to give it a little help. And yeah, just gonna make it, and you're gonna just keep doing that until you get it so there's no tension on it, basically, right? That's what you're after. And it's fairly close to the shape of the grill. Now these grills are pretty tough, so you don't have to worry really about breaking them or anything like that, but okay. And then once you get that to that point, you're going to take a Sharpie you're going to hold it down against the grill itself, and you're going to start marking this bottom line along the curve. You're going to do the same thing on the top, and then you'll do the same things down the sides. And for the sides, you don't need it to go further than this last rib that's on each one, okay? And then once you do that, you'll end up with something like this that will fit in here, right? And then what you can do is, and if you do this ahead of time before you put them in, like unlike I did, right, it'll be much easier than trying to do this on the robot. But basically what you're going to do then on the bottom is just take some clear epoxy and dab it on the bottom right here. You can hold this down with tape temporarily while you dab that. And then at the top here, you're just going to do it on sort of both ends to hold the top in a little bit, but you don't need to do it all on the top because you don't want glue running down, okay? This is all hidden on the bottom here because the body is farther out than here, so you won't see that. So you're just going to want to make sure that, you know, wherever you put the glue, it's pretty much hidden in the, when you look at it from the outside. And that's kind of how it'll work and how it'll look, and then you'll be all set, and you'll have your screens on the back of your vents. Alright, so there it is installed, and what I've done here is after I laid it in here, I put two little pieces of like Gorilla tape here on each end to hold it in place, basically, so you can see the kind of tape right there temporarily. And then what I did is on the bottom, where it's hidden after it passes the body, on each of the little tabs here, I just did clear epoxy. So that bottom is being held in right now, and as soon as that clear epoxy dries, then it'll be set. And then what I'll do is I'll just put two little tabs at the top here, like right up here on each side, to tack the two tops in. The top of the part of the grill will not be epoxied in, right? And it's just below, as you can see, the edge of the track. And so let's go see what it looks like from the outside. But that's how you sort of mount it in there. The bottom's really what's holding it in, and then there'll be two little tabs at the top here. So once this fully hardens at the bottom here, I'll take the Gorilla tape and put it up here to really pull it close to the thing, and then tap it, and that'll hold it in. There's the final look, basically. You know, you get that sort of original mesh look from the series, and yeah, it looks really good, right? And it sort of obscures a little bit the mechanics on the inside. If I look up from here, you can see that it's just below the edge at the top, because I don't want it rubbing against the track at the top, right? Because it'll hang up, because mine are functional. If yours are not functional, then it doesn't really matter, right? But you can see that even looking it straight on, you can't really see it. You'd have to look from underneath the robot to see that little tiny gap. So that's perfect the way it works. All right, so now that you see the finished product there. We just have to do the other two vents, and we'll be finished. All right, so our next step is to get the neon in. And so what I've done here is I've had a place to put the transformer for the neon. And so what I did is I just mounted it on the back right above the two holes where the belly lights come through. So basically I have enough room right there. You can't see this, nobody's gonna see this. This is below the torso level. And you know, the reason I put it here is because I'm not sure if this warms up or not, but I didn't want it on the body itself because first of all, these leads are too short. So I wanted something just incorporated here. So what I did is I just put a quick disconnect here coming on the two, the power lead, the ground lead, and then the trigger wire for the voice. So the three wires coming out here. On the other side, we've got these two wires, right? And they are, if you look at them, they're unique in that if you look at the wire itself, it's kind of a thin wire, but it has a very, very thick silicone jacket around it. The reason is because this is 8,000 volts coming out of this little transformer, right, to power the neon. So they have these high tension wires on them. So in that particular case, I didn't want to have to, you know, I didn't know if using regular wire was going to be okay, or if, you know, there's a potential for a shock, not. So basically what I did is I just mounted it here so these can connect directly to the neon itself. So all we're going to need is a little diode in between these two, right? And then connect it right to the neon. Okay, and that's the way it works. Now these wires right here, even though they look like they're just normal aluminum wires, I'm not sure what they're made out of, but whatever material it is, it doesn't want to solder. So these are almost like wire connectors on this particular case, because it just, I've tried soldering it multiple times, it just will not solder. Nothing sticks to it. I'm not sure why. So, but anyway, it doesn't really matter because we'll just use the wire nut connectors like we did on the front here. So, you know, we did that on the connection between the two pieces of neon, right? So we'll do that same thing right here on this connection on both sides, right? So what I got to do next is just get a hole through here so I can run this through and then put the little diode in between here, get these connected on both the top and the bottom here. And then this unit will be set and ready to go to be installed into the robot. Right, so we've got this all hooked up here. So we've got our high tension leads coming off here. One is going in here. Inside here is the diode facing the right direction. So the flow goes into the neon on the bottom and then it comes out. So the diode up here is in the opposite direction because it's going out and back into the transformer on the back here, right? Now these leads on the side here you can't see, and you don't need to drill holes in here because you can just leave it as is, like sort of like that, right? And basically you don't want to keep bending the leads that come out of the neon too much. They're pretty tough, but you don't want to possibly break them off because then you got a mess there. Everything else has been insulated with tape and everything to make sure there's no leaking, and that's it. So we're gonna, before we now mount this, we're gonna test this again just to make sure it works. So all we're gonna do is take a lead on the connector here, and I'm gonna hook up power and ground. So power and ground hooked up on here, and then basically the green lead is the one that's the trigger wire. So I'm gonna leave that off right now. So first we're just gonna power it up with just the hot and ground. So I'm gonna turn on my power supply here. All right, I got 12 volts coming in. As you can see, nothing's happening. So if I touch the green lead to the power wire, it should light, which it does. And there is, when I'm looking at it here, there's zero beating in this at all. So it looks fantastic, right? So we've tested it out. Now we know it works. So all we have to do is get this mounted in the torso. Now this, it's going to be a little finicky. I think these holes right here are off, so I might have to drill these out a little bit bigger where the back of the chest lights go through. Now, the other thing is that right now I have the two chest lights hooked up, so I've got to disconnect the wires on the back of those and then put that together. And that's hard to do once you get this on, because then you can't really see back there. So I'm going to have to basically flip the torso over to get the chest lights hooked up again. So little finicky. And then at the top here is just holes. You can see 1, 2, 3. There's actually a fourth one here. But this is where it screws down from the top of the torso and clamps it in there. So it's a you know, it's a little finicky to get it going, but you can, you know, obviously do it. And that's our next step. Now I was waiting for a switch to come in for the rotary knob on the front, which is going to be below this, but again, I think I can just flip over the torso because I really want to get this in. I'm kind of excited to see what it looks like. So yeah, that's going to be our next step. All right, guys, we're getting really close to finishing out the actual torso section. We've got a couple small things left. We've got the, I'm waiting for a switch to come in for here, and we got the microphone on this side, so we got some work there. But we did get the neon in, so as you can see, that's what it looks like when it's just sitting in there by itself unlit. And again, we just mounted it with the backing plate, and then at the top there are 3 recessed screws right here that hold the top edge of the backing plate in. And that's really all that holds it in. Let's look at the inside. You can kind of see on the inside, this is the backing plate here. You can see the transformer for the neon, and then the wires run up to the side here to make those connections. And that's all hidden underneath here. You can't see any of that from the outside. But you still have plenty of access in here, right, to do everything you want on the front here. So, but, you know, I've got the wires all routed here that go up to the voice trigger board and everything. So everything is all set on this side of it. And if you look at it from the front, like even when you're looking at it from the sides, you can't see anything, right? Because it's all hidden underneath the torso's body itself. So yeah, even from the top and everything, you can't see anything. So looks really good just sitting there by itself. So now this is actually the second set of neon, because I was all done with the original set that I had on the backing plate, and I put it all together and tested it out, made sure everything was working, and on the bench, and then I put it into the torso and something happened. Here's the neon that was in there, you know, and everything was hooked up. I tested it on the bench, it was fine. I put it in the robot, and I saw like 1 tube here and 1 tube at the top lit, and that was it. Nothing else lit. And so I had to take it out. I took it apart to check it, and lo and behold, right here, when I was putting it in, I guess it hit the body or something. I'm not sure what, but you can see, well, you probably can't see it too well, but right there, the tip of the glass is popped off, right? The little, that's where they seal it up after they put the neon in it, basically. So I basically broke the little tip of the glass off right there, of course, which let all the neon out of the lower piece. Now the upper piece works fine. If I just you know, power that directly from its 2 leads, this top piece is okay, this bottom piece is gone, so it didn't work. It's dead. We're close. Let's put the power pack in and see what we get here. Alright, so the robot powers up. You know, all the front lights are working. Let me zoom in here for the belly lights. And so for these lights, you can see they're just doing the random pattern right now. The way I have it wired up is I have 2 switches on the bottom here. I can do speed it up, as you can see. Speeds up the random pattern. Or I can switch patterns. So now it's doing a 3-bulb chase pattern all the way around there, right? So I can pick whichever one. And that's the fast 3-bulb chase pattern. I can slow it down to the slow 3-bulb chase pattern. So yeah, I have a couple different options with the 2 different switches down here in the programming bay that I can do. Okay, and then of course I've got the little tape reel on a switch right here. So that's those 3 switches in the programming bay. And then, of course, I've got the soil sampler. So when I trigger that, it goes into the roundabout chase pattern. And depending where I have this switch down here, I can change it. So let me trigger that actually. So you can see it's triggered and it's going round and round, but I can make that faster by just flipping that switch. So depending which way I want to have it when the soil sampler is running. And then once the soil sampler is finished, it'll go back to its normal pattern. So that works out really well. Alright, so then we've got the actual neon here. So let me get him to talk here.
Main computer boot sequence completed.
Alright.
I am a robot model B-9 of the class M3, programmed to provide information and support to all members of this household.
So it works really well.
I also respond to blinky. Affirmative. Negative. What you do not possess in accuracy, you make up for in lack of logic. Intense photon emissions from your primitive imaging device have damaged my optical sensor arrays.
So it works really well.
Do you have any WD-40? Danger, danger, Will Robinson. Negative. I am a robot, vital being. I also respond to blinky. Affirmative. Negative. Intense photon emission. Hands off the neon, my friend. Affirmative. What you do not possess in it, may I be excused? Ask me no questions, and I will tell you no lies, Earth creature. Intense photon emissions from your primitive imaging device have damaged my optical sensor arrays.
Alright, so it looks pretty good. The camera actually washes it out a little bit, so it's much sort of like darker red in person, but everything's working up to this point. So really, for the torso, I've just got two small things left, right? Because we've got the grills in now on the, not the grills, we've got the mesh behind the grills on the vent grills done too. We got those finished up, so all we have really left for the torso is the microphone and that little rotary switch that sort of goes right there. The rotary switch goes here, and the microphone is going to go here. So I just have to get those going, and then that'll all be finished as far as the torso goes. Now I have all these cables over here, which are a bunch of quick disconnects, as you can see. Everything's labeled and marked, but you can see I've got two quick. You probably can't with the window here. Hold on. Let me try to get a better angle here. There you go. So you can see the two big quick disconnects. I actually have a couple wires left on the one. I've got a pair left I can use for something, but those are the two big ones that handle pretty much everything. And then there's one quick disconnect for the main power right here. So there's three connects right there just for the torso to the body. Now that doesn't include though all these that you see right here, and this is all the wires that are coming off for the chest buttons. Right now these are going to have to go all the way back to a bunch of boards, right? Either the computer board for, you know, that's going to control the software on the robot, or the MP3 board to trigger different MP3 sayings and stuff like that. So this is all future stuff, but I think the next thing I'm going to do is get because there's 20 wires here, so I'm going to get a 20 pin Molex connector and probably have to do it that way. These were pre-made connectors. These ones up here, these were all pre-made with wires already in them, but you can only get so many wires for the pre-made ones, like otherwise you got to create your own. So this is going to have to be a Molex connector, and those things are a pain to take all those little tiny terminals and solder these all on and everything. So that's a job just by itself, but that's what I will do. I'll put a Molex connector on this one and a matching one as it goes into the robot, and then that'll just plug into that. So there'll basically be 4 quick disconnects from the torso over to the main body here, and that will allow me to take the torso off whenever I need to. So otherwise, I think we've got everything finished. We got all the wiring routed pretty neatly on the inside of the torso. So really, we could put this on the, just to mount it up just to see what it would look like, but I do want to get this rotary switch in and the microphone finished first. Now the microphone is actually going to be a live mic that I'm going to use for voice commands, so it has to be functional too at the same time. So that's a little bit of a project in itself. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed that video on some wiring, some the neon on the front here, different things we're doing with the lighting and things like that. So this is just the beginning, right? We're just getting the build done and the structural pieces operational. This will all really come together when we get to the software portion of the build, but that's a little farther down the road. We still got more work to do here, but we're getting there. It's closer. So as always, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, put your comments down below about this video, and I'll see you on the next B-9 build robot video. Peace, guys.